Okay, so today we're going to examine the recent appointment of David Steiner. He's set to be the next Postmaster General for the U.S. Postal Service, taking over from Louis DeJoy.
That's right. And there's quite a bit to unpack here.
Definitely. We'll be covering Steiner's background, his time at FedEx and waste management.
And also the appointment process itself by the USPS Board of Governors.
Right, and naturally, the reactions. There have been quite a few, some raising concerns.
Indeed. So a lot to get through.
Absolutely. And if this topic grabs your interest, please do take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps us continue these kinds of explorations.
Okay, so the announcement itself came from Amber McReynolds. She's the chair of the USPS Board of Governors.
And this was following an open board meeting, I believe, on a Friday.
Yes, exactly. Now, about Steiner himself, he's often described as, a highly regarded leader, lots of executive experience.
And the most talked about part is probably his current role, right? A board member at FedEx?
That's the one drawing the most attention, yes. A major competitor to the Postal Service.
But his main executive role before this was at Waste Management.
That's right. President and CEO there for 12 years. He's actually credited with turning quite a bit around there.
In terms of operations and culture, and I assume the bottom line.
Exactly. Delivering strong financial results is often cited. Before being CEO, he was also the CFO there.
So a finance background as well. And even before that.
Earlier in his career, he was a partner at a law firm, Phelps Dunbar.
Okay, quite varied. And educationally.
He holds a Bachelor of Science in Accounting from LSU, Louisiana State University. And then a Juris Doctor degree, a law degree from UCLA.
Right, so accounting, law, finance, CEO experience. It's a broad resume. But that FedEx board seat, that's really sticking out for some people.
It is. It's immediately raised flags about potential conflicts of interest. FedEx is, after all, a direct and major competitor.
And there's some history there, too, isn't there? Between FedEx and USPS, they used to work together more closely.
Yes, there were collaborations. Things like last-mile deliveries, where FedEx might hand off packages to USPS for the final delivery step.
And air transport partnerships, too, I think.
Correct. But those arrangements have largely ended now, so the competitive aspect is perhaps even more pronounced today.
And this whole appointment is happening against a certain political backdrop, isn't it? There's been ongoing discussion about influence over the Postal Service.
Yes, there has. You might remember past suggestions from President Trump about maybe integrating USPS with the Commerce Department somehow. A form of a merger, as he put it.
Vaguely, yes. And there's also been talk about President Trump planning to nominate more people to the USPS governing board itself.
That adds another layer to the context, certainly.
So, given all that background, especially waste management and FedEx, what kind of leader might Steiner be for the USPS? What changes could we anticipate?
Well, it's hard to say definitively, but his background suggests a focus on perhaps operational efficiency and financial discipline. That was his reputation at Waste Management.
But the USPS isn't just a business, right? It has that public service mandate. How does his experience translate there?
That's the key question. He did address this in his statement after the appointment was announced.
Oh, right. What did he say?
He expressed admiration for the Postal Service's mission, acknowledging both the public service side and the business side. He also affirmed his belief in its independence.
Did he mention engaging with stakeholders? That's usually important.
He did. He specifically mentioned wanting to engage with employees, the unions, management, industry groups, customers, and policymakers.
And when is he expected to start?
He anticipates joining in July, but that's pending the usual ethics reviews and security clearance processes.
And the FedEx board seat?
He stated he will leave the FedEx board and manage any other potential conflicts as required before taking the Postmaster General role.
Okay. But not everyone's convinced. Representative Jerry Connolly, for instance, had some strong words.
Yes, he was quite critical, called the appointment a blatant conflict of interest.
And he suggested it was an attempt to install someone loyal to the president's interests.
That was his interpretation, yes. Prioritizing the president's agenda over the Postal Service's needs.
And what about the unions? They represent the workforce, so their reaction is crucial.
Very significant and somewhat divided, or at least nuanced. Brian Renfro, who leads the National Association of Letter Carriers, the NALC, he strongly opposes the appointment. He called it an aggressive step toward handing America's mail system over to corporate interests.
Wow, strong language. Did he say more?
He suggested it was like an open invitation for private shippers, like FedEx presumably, to take over more of the parcel delivery business.
Okay, so clear opposition there. What about other unions?
Don Maston from the National Rural Letter Carriers Association, the NRLCA, had a slightly different tone.
How so?
He said the union is ready to work with Steiner, so more of a wait-and-see approach, perhaps.
But with reservations.
Definitely. Maston added they'll be watching closely, specifically because of the FedEx board membership. He really emphasized the high stakes.
For rural communities especially, and working families, and just the future of the Postal Service itself.
Exactly. So a cautious willingness to engage, but deep concerns remain.
You mentioned labor relations. How might Steiner's background, particularly coming from companies like FedEx, impact negotiations or just the general relationship with the USPS unions?
That's a big unknown. His experience is primarily in the private sector, often with non-union or differently unionized workforces compared to the heavily unionized USPS. He'll need to navigate that complex relationship carefully. His waste management experience might offer some clues, but USPS is unique.
It really is. And maybe we should just briefly touch on the structure of the USPS itself for context.
Good idea. So the modern Postal Service was set up by the Postal Reorganization Act of 1970. It made it an independent agency within the executive branch, separate from the White House's direct control, theoretically.
And the funding part is key too, isn't it?
Crucial. Since 1982, it generally hasn't received tax dollars for its operating expenses. It's meant to rely on selling stamps, products, and services.
Self-financing, essentially, while serving everyone.
That's the mandate. Be self-sustaining, but provide universal service to every community, profitable or not. And that's been a huge challenge.
Yeah, the financial struggles are well documented. They've had trouble balancing the books for years.
That's putting it mildly. They actually had a surplus in the first quarter this fiscal year, which was notable.
But that didn't last.
No. The second quarter showed a net loss of $3.3 billion. And last year, the total net loss was $9.5 billion.
Huge numbers. Are there specific things driving those losses? Pension obligations often come up.
Pension and retiree health benefit pre-funding requirements have historically been a massive burden, yes.
Yeah.
Though recent legislation has provided some relief there. But declining first-class mail volume is also a major factor.
Right, the shift to digital communication. So Steiner's financial background from waste management, how might that apply here? He supposedly turned things around financially there.
Well, his experience managing complex budgets, large workforces, and focusing on efficiency metrics could be relevant. At Waste Management, he dealt with logistics, fleet management, and customer service on a large scale.
Similar operational challenges, perhaps, but a very different mission and financial structure.
Exactly. The need to find efficiencies will likely be a priority, but balancing that with the universal service obligation is the tightrope walk for any Postmaster General.
And this is all happening as Louis DeJoy's tenure ends. He resigned back in March.
Correct. And the 10-year reorganization plan he initiated back in 2021, called Delivering for America, is still underway.
That's the plan aiming for modernization and financial stability, right? Could you maybe outline its main goals quickly?
Broadly, yes. It involves things like investing in new delivery vehicles, optimizing the processing and delivery network, sometimes controversially consolidating facilities, adjusting service standards, and trying to grow the package delivery business to offset mail decline.
So streamlining operations, basically, and technology upgrades.
Definitely. Modernizing sorting equipment, improving tracking, that sort of thing.
And how might Steiner's background fit with that ongoing plan? Does it align, or could he shift its direction?
His background in logistics and transformation, especially from waste management, seems, on the surface, quite aligned with the plan's goals of efficiency and network optimization.
Makes sense.
He might bring a strong focus on data analytics, performance metrics, maybe even look at service models differently based on his private sector experience.
But again, the public service part.
That's the caveat. FedEx and Waste Management are profit-driven. USPS has that legal obligation to serve everywhere. So applying purely private sector logic might clash with that mandate. It'll be fascinating to see how he balances those potentially competing pressures.
There was also that mention of an agreement with Elon Musk's DOGE team for further efficiencies. That sounded a bit unusual.
Yes, that was a specific point mentioned in some reporting. The details are scarce, but it suggests an openness to perhaps unconventional technological approaches or partnerships. Needs more clarity, though.
Right. And we should also probably note President Trump's past criticisms of USPS finances. He even floated privatization at one point.
You did. He called it not the worst idea, though that idea generally faces strong bipartisan opposition and raises huge concerns, especially about maintaining service, particularly in rural areas.
Yeah, universal service would likely be threatened under privatization. So Steiner becomes the 76th Postmaster General.
Correct. The long history there. And the role is vital, delivering medications, payments, ballots, connecting people and businesses.
And it's the Board of Governors, not the president directly, who has the power to appoint and remove the Postmaster General, right?
That's the legal structure established by the 1970 Act. The board holds that authority.
So, summing up, Appointing someone with Steiner's deep roots in a major competitor like FedEx to lead the USPS, it's definitely a complex move.
Absolutely. It brings significant executive experience, but also immediate questions about conflicts and priorities. The implications for the agency's future, its workforce, and the service it provides to literally everyone in the country are, well, they're substantial.
A situation we'll certainly be watching closely.
Without a doubt.
Well, that brings us to the end of this discussion. If you found this exploration of David Steiner's appointment and its context valuable, and you want to stay informed on similar topics, please do consider liking this and subscribing for future updates.
Tis for tuning in.